Facing cancer doesn't mean you are now only the cancer patient. So often we hear those with cancer share the need to feel seen, to feel understood, and not feel alone. So whether you are facing cancer yourself or supporting someone who is, join us. My name is Susan Larkin. We are Facing Cancer Together. Anyone who names their own podcast Women of Ill Repute is not going to hold back. And Maureen Halloway and Wendy Mesley certainly do not hold back when it comes to sharing their cancer experiences. I am so thrilled to have journalist Wendy Mesley and radio broadcaster Maureen Halloway join us today. Icons from the broadcast industry in Canada, and now, of course, with a fabulous podcast called Women of Ill Repute. Both are also cancer survivors, and that's why they've joined us today. Welcome, Maureen. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi.
Nice to be here.
So yeah, we're both cancer survivors, and we're still here, still pounding the pavement. So we'll see.
Wendy, tell us a bit about your cancer experience.
Oh boy, it was 17, 18 years ago. So, and I'm still here, which is the main point, because a friend of mine reached out the other day to say a friend of mine's just been diagnosed, and I'm like, which camp is she in? Because to me, there's two camps. There's the you're going to die camp. You're probably going to die camp, and you're probably going to live camp. And I was always, I think, in the I'm probably going to live camp. And so, you know, I had a tumor that went from nowhere to hey, I'm here very quickly. I had a mammogram done, and it was all clear. And 2 months later, there was a big hard lump, and I was like, whoa. Anyway, I had that operated on, and then after the operation, after the operation, and just as I was going into chemo, they said, why don't we do another MRI just to make sure? And they found another tumor in the other boob. So they put a little sticker on that, and then took it out afterwards, and the chemo had done absolutely nothing. But I went through, like Maureen, I went through lots of hills and valleys, and I think Maureen went through a lot more valleys than me. But we're both still here. I had Herceptin, so so there's lots of tales to tell about being of not being able to take estrogen after you're shoved into menopause early. So here we are. We're very happy to be alive.
Well, the first of all, there's a weird connection, and Wendy and our relationship has been full of weird connections because we were diagnosed with breast cancer probably within a year of each other. We both had children almost exactly the same age. Kate is 24. My son Ronan is 24. I also have a 30-year-old. So they were 12 and 7 at the time, I guess, doing the math,
Kate was
something
6.
like that. Yeah. So that was strange. We were both being treated at Princess Margaret. I think we knew of each other, but we didn't know each other. But sometimes I would see Wendy across the waiting room, because we were both seeing Dr. McCready. So it was kind of there have been a lot of other coincidences in our lives, but that was probably one of the more notable ones. In terms of Wendy's two kinds of people, I was strangely and shockingly in the probably going to die category, only because they had no idea. I had 2 lumps, both on the same breast, one in the skin and one in the breast tissue, that were completely different on a cellular level. So after spending a fair amount of time trying to figure out what was going on, they at the time decided it must be another form of cancer that is now metastasized and has emerged in this way. So they promptly did the MAME burn in poison. Basically, I had a mastectomy, and then I had chemo, and then I had radiation, all within a year. And at no point did anybody say, oh, you're probably going to be okay. Nobody said you're not going to be okay, because they don't do that. They don't do that until you're, on a slab. They're, it didn't work out. But at that time, it was complete and utter uncertainty. And it was, as it turned out, they had diagnosed it. This was 2005, right, Wendy? They had diagnosed it as metaplastic carcinoma. Now what they know is it was triple negative. So unlike Wendy, I didn't have her septum. There was no hormonal tag to either of the cooties I had. But I didn't get a prognosis. Still haven't. I just want you to know that, it still could happen. But 18 years later, I've had I'm still being seen at Princess Margaret because of the unusual form. But nobody, I've been given the all clear that if something's going to take me away, but it probably won't be that.
Yeah, well, that's what bothers me the most is that everyone says, "Oh, so you're cured now."
Yeah,
and
there's
I'm
no,
like,
yeah,
there's no such thing.
No. But I mean, unlike other forms of cancer, we have not tested. We're not managing our cancer. As far as I know, you're not. It is eradicated to the best of anybody's ability to find out. But who knows what else lurks in the hearts of men and women.
Yeah, for a while we, and for you much longer because of your weirdo diagnosis.
Yeah,
you used to go back. You're
a weirdo.
Well, you always want to be special. You were special. I should say special instead of weirdo. Yeah, but we used to go back. I went back for 5 or 6 years, and finally the doctor, Dr. McCready, said, "Well, goodbye.
Get out of here.
We're not going to do the MRIs anymore." And
whereas I still get them. Yeah.
Yeah, but it still bothers me when people who don't know and they're full of love in their hearts, I'm sure, say, "Oh, so you're cured?" So no, you just hope you're going to die of something else.
Yeah.
So we're working on that, aren't we?
Yeah,
Aren't we?
Maureen, your career is based on humor.
Yes,
that is a huge part of your amazing radio broadcasting career. Did you use humor as you were going through treatment?
Oh God, yes. In fact, I've actually, when I used to be on the lecture circuit, and I'm willing to be again, by the way, I did a whole talk on using humor to get through cancer. And right from the beginning, it was the cooties thing. I remember my brother sending me an email going, "You have two kinds of cooties." So I stuck with that. But yeah, as I once said, if you can't have fun with cancer, there's no point having it. I can't help it. I find that's how I operate. I tend to find the absurd. And sometimes people are really shocked by that, in hushed tones, but she has cancer. I worked through my entire treatment. I did take a week off to have the mastectomy. And then I was back right afterwards and broadcasting from home. And I had to be very open about it because, when you're a public figure of any kind, I had told my immediate circle of friends and family what was going on, but of course it was going to get out to the listeners. So I kind of decided without much hesitation that I was going to have to be completely open about it in Toronto. And I was on air across the country, but my biggest markets were Toronto, Montreal. So I was totally upfront with my colleagues in those two stations. I didn't bother going into out west because it's exhausting. Because as soon as you tell people, I remember the day that I told the Q107 listeners in Toronto, I must have had 2,000 emails in the first hour. Big station, big, loyal, loving listenership. And everybody either wanted to reach out and tell me they were there for me. It was very moving. Or they wanted to tell me about an experience that they'd had. A lot of people wanted to tell me when they'd lost cancer. I mean, you get the whole bag. But I talked about it, not frequently, but, and I think it really heartened people to hear me on the air every day laughing, because that was my job, was to be humorous, knowing I was going through all of this treatment. And it was very heartening for people to know that not only can you go on with your life while you're being treated, but you can enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I found that too, because I didn't work nearly as hard as Maureen. Maybe my excuse is not that I'm a weaker person, but that anchoring, like, you've got to be, you've got to appear,
component.
You've got to anyway. I have very amusing stories about having false eyelashes and all this stuff put on so that I can anchor the National when I was bald. But it's really interesting, I think, both about how people expect you to be sad and grateful and not funny, but you don't get a personality transplant with your lumpectomy or whatever, the mastectomy or whatever. You just don't. And life has to go on. And I feel like that wasn't always appreciated. And the other thing is the desire to be part of the world. Like I worked one week out of 3, which was my strongest week after the chemo and so on. Because you have 1 week where you're kind of like, and a second week where you're exposed to all kinds of other people's cooties that could kill you. And then the third week, you're like, whoa, I might have no hair, but I'd actually like contact with the rest. And it's not like you can go to France or whatever for a month. You're in treatment.
Yeah.
So I would go back to work just to be able to deal with other people and to say, I'm here and I hope I'm not going anywhere. But the being funny part is really, I don't know. I think people do want you to be, oh, I'm so glad that I've survived.
So grateful.
Which I'm so grateful, and I'm just a completely different, and I realize the value of life now. Well, screw that. Like, I appreciated the value of life before I got cancer. It just took a year away from my life.
I didn't need to have cancer. It didn't make me a better person.
Yeah.
A lot of people will attest to that. I do want to support Wendy in the sense that I, again, stress that I got to work at home. This was before Zoom, long before Zoom, but we had something called an ISDN line, which is a dedicated telephone line that you can put into your home and you sound like you are in the studio. So the quality is that good. And so I had that available to me already because I was doing what you call syndicated, but in fact, it was live appearances on stations across the country. So I didn't have the visual. I was as bald as Wendy, which is bald as a cue ball. Pretty bald. No eyelashes, no eyebrows, nothing. Like lost all body hair. And so I didn't have to worry about the makeup and the false eyelashes and all that sort of stuff. I could broadcast from home and not be seen. That being said, I did make a couple of public appearances, and was greeted with that, oh, which is hard to take, Sometimes it's like, do I really look that bad? But it's not bad. It's just my father would never want to see me without a hat or a wig on because it upset him too much. So
I always wore a wig when I was going outside. Not in the house. Like my daughter was 6, and so she would like draw on my head, and she'd be mini me. It would be like hilarious. But when I went outside, I wore a wig. Not because I was ashamed of anything, but because I have a recognizable face and I didn't want people to say, oh, there you are. Oh, and you've lost I didn't want to draw attention to myself in that way. And that's my excuse anyway.
I said, you don't need an excuse. So I've met a lot of people and I have some personal friends who were also diagnosed. And I had one friend, beautiful girl I went to high school with. And she was diagnosed and she lost all her hair. That was the most devastating part of it for her, was losing her gorgeous, lustrous hair. And she wore a wig, but not only that, she didn't go out in public till her own hair had not just grown back a little bit, but till she had the full head. And that was the most, not the potential prognosis, not the fact that her life was in danger. But I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying she's a shallow person. A little bit, I guess I am saying. but the fact that mattered more to her than anything else. And but it goes to show you, right?
There was a study a couple of years ago that showed 8% of women would decline treatment because of the fear of hair loss.
I mean, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know.
Hair grows back. In all the places.
We interviewed Jeannie Becker, who also just went through cancer treatment, and she was very open about it as well. And I don't think in this day and age, and certainly in this business, that you can keep it a secret for long. But she had some kind of cool cap on, so she was able to keep like bits and strands. So yeah, I've never thought of myself as that vain, but it was really brutal. It was really hard. Shearing off I remember going to a theater because it happens really quickly when you start taking the chemo.
It happens within a week.
And the first couple of days, I'm like, I still got a full head of hair. I look great. And then the day 4, we went to a movie, and I looked like a rabid squirrel. I had like clumps falling off in my hand.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll just stick them back on, and no one will notice. But of course, everybody noticed. So I had, from my wonderful hairdresser at the time, I had borrowed his shaver for the moment. And I I think you had John, your husband, do it, but
In the garden, yeah.
Oh, it was horrible. I went into our bedroom and I just shaved my head and I saw the pile. And it was a moment that I didn't really want to share with anybody.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
It is a big deal. Couple of other things too that happened to you that it's like, okay, everybody thinks, oh, you have cancer, you're gonna get, at least you'll get skinny. And I think, Sue, just from your reaction, Wendy certainly knows that's not necessarily the case. When you're going through chemo, you just crave white food. You want ice cream and bread, and because you're nauseous, no matter what kind of drugs you're taking. And the last thing you want is fiber. And I mean, you can try, but the fact of the matter is comfort foods are all you crave.
Yeah,
So,
and you lie in bed most of the day.
And you're not particularly active, although I tried to be. I did a lot of yoga, but you don't really want to do cardio because you're basically being poisoned every 3 weeks. So it's very hard to have some energy. So you tend to have the ice cream, have the bread, have the whatever makes you feel better. But you do tend to put on weight, so you're fat and you're bald. And it's not great. Oh, and I just want to add, while I was going through all of this, and this may be a weird thing to do, certainly people thought it was, but my teeth were crooked. And I already wore braces. The history of my teeth is a long and involved one, and you can read about it on our Substack account. But my teeth were really bothering me because without eyelashes and hair, you have nothing to hide behind. So your smile is all you have. And my my oldest son was getting braces at the time. He's 12. So I went to his orthodontist and I said, what do you think? And he said, well, if you want to do this fast, you'll need the full metal jacket. Not Invisalign. You'll need to get the full metal jacket and it'll take about a year. And I thought, you know what? I'm a chrysalis. I have no hair. I have no eyelashes. I'm going to do it. So when I get out of this, if I get out of this, I got to look amazing. And so I did. And I remember, one of my kids saying, Mom, you're so odd looking now. But I had faith that it was all going to pay off in the end. And look at me now.
Your teeth are gorgeous.
Let's see the teeth. You look
They're
amazing.
huge, but
yeah, I know. I thought I had cancer of everything for a while.
Right.
So I went, I'm just remembering I had some weird tooth thing. And so I had to go to the special cancer dentist. And then I thought I'm peeing funny. So then I went to the special cancer and I sat on a Donald Trump gold toilet and I peed in front of a guy for
wow.
What the
heck? Did you charge?
No, I know. When I think of it now, I did all kinds of embarrassing things.
Gold toilet.
I think it was probably solid gold. They all have that,
But there is that. I remember I had a wart, like a planter's wart. And so,
cancer.
And McCready said, no, it's a wart. So I went to a dermatologist and he said, well, it's a planter's wart. It's a lot of work so you're going to have to come back every month. So I would go to chemo and then I would go to the dermatologist and have my wart treated. And guess what lasted longer? The wart did.
Well, I think was something that you were saying just before we started, Sue, about how important it is to talk to somebody. Like I could talk to my husband and I could talk to my best friends and my daughter. And I really, really needed those people's love and support. But there was something unusual about talking to somebody who'd taken the red pill and knew exactly what the red pill was going to do and knew exactly, I didn't want all of the details, and thank God, let's not tell everyone all of the details if they're just starting chemo. But being able to talk to somebody else. And there was Maureen, who was about to go through all of this, and we never spoke.
Because we didn't really know each other that well. That happened later. Another interesting thing was our age. So Wendy and I were both in our early to mid 40s when we were diagnosed, which is young. And I've never asked you this. I actually I'm talking to Wendy here. I was slammed into menopause as a result of the chemo. And you were too, Wendy.
Yeah. Well, one day I was and one day I wasn't. So it was very, very quick.
Because I wasn't on Herceptin. So after I finished the treatment but going through menopause in your mid 40s on top of everything else, and also having young children, and talk about no sex drive whatsoever. I mean, it really there was never a day where I felt like, hey, let's have at it. Now, I don't know what happened with you, Wendy. After I stopped treatment, I started menstruating again because the force is strong in me. And because
well, I'm obviously not that strong.
well,
so,
you had hormonal breast
yeah.
cancer. I did
Oh,
not.
I had,
so
yeah.
so they just said, go ahead, bleed away. So I had the luxury of going through it twice, again, 10 years later in my 50s. So that happened.
But it was fascinating because I entered menopause early. At 47, I think I entered menopause, and then I tried to have a conversation because I just find it so weird that I don't know. I could go on and on about the terminology that's used for all of the hysterectomy and whatever. The oophorectomy was my favorite, which is having your ovaries. Why do they call it? A little respect, please. An oophorectomy
because it's an egg.
I know, but they need better words. But hysterectomy is a much better example. But I found talking about menopause for many people is still like a taboo subject.
Oh yeah.
And I tried to say, okay, I have a friend who went through it for 20 years and every hot flash she had to like express. And I'm like, every woman goes through that. Like, shut the hell up. But so I don't need
That's
that.
Supportive.
Yeah. Well, after 20 years, it gets a little tiresome.
Because it
the
does
first
go
10
on
years,
a long time.
The first 10 years was fine. But we should be able to talk about these things. And especially not especially, anybody should be able to say like the word menopause without having to say the word menopause.
Yeah.
It's kind of silly. Anyway.
Yeah. Not words we need to whisper. When two broadcasters get talking, you know it won't all fit into one episode. So tune into our next episode to hear the second half of our conversation about cancer between these two women of ill repute. Please share the Facing Cancer Together podcast with anyone in your life facing a cancer diagnosis or caring for someone who is. And if you're interested in learning more about Look Good, Feel Better and our workshops, visit us at lgfb.ca.
This is Story Studio Network.